Long time no see, because this isn't my channel. That's right, I've stolen it this week to talk about everyone's favorite game, Dungeons and Dragons. Yep, everyone's favorite game. If it's not yours, then, well, you probably haven't played enough of it yet. And honestly, you should probably remedy that. Recently, Kona and I started up a new D&D campaign with yours truly as the DM. We wanted to share these stories with you, but ran into the slight issue of Kona not knowing everyone's backstory yet in campaign, and wanting to avoid spoilers for themselves. That's why I'm here. I, and now you, get the privilege of that sweet, sweet lore. So I'll be going over the backstories of all 6 of the players while Kona makes the art of them. Yep, 6 players. Before you ask, yes, I do have a problem. But for now, grab a snack and a chair, because my name's Volare, and oh, do I have a story to share. The mostly ocean-covered world of Kratoris is a dangerous place. Pirates roam the vast seas, while beasts lurk in their depths. Elementals converge at the primordial nexus, and strange monstrosities are brought forth in the far corners of the world. All the while, the mythical world tree looms overhead. Its leafless branches crack the sky, forever being a source of both apprehension and reverence. As far as safe places go, you don't get much safer than within the lands of the Halasmir Empire. It is here where we meet our first character. The young sea elf, Joel, always took an interest in learning. From a young age, he was taught the methods of arboreal navigation by his mother, who herself had once been a part of the Empire's Scarlet Armada. His skills could have easily gotten him into the Armada as a navigator, if he had been raised with even a single shred of violence within him. Instead, he spends his days trying to learn as much as he can about the world, which, within the Empire, isn't too much. That is, until he finds a strange chart in the attic of his mother's inn. A chart of stars, written in a language he cannot read. Questioning his mother, he learns of the existence of a book she brought home during a brief visit home from the warfront, similarly unreadable. Digging up the ancient tome in the dusty archives of the library, Joel got to work translating. It took him months, but he deciphered the mystical texts, leading him to discover magics he had yet to hear of. Throughout it all, the stars remained the key. Eventually, the ever-pounding drums of war reached his home, and he was left with a choice. Join the Navy, something he'd avoided all these years, or finally set out to learn more about the world that he had read so often in books. With the encouragement of his parents, he chose the latter. He hopped aboard a ship, and never looked back. And thus begins the story of Joel, the Star-Seeker Druid. Hailing from nearby, unbeknownst to each other, is our second character, Aelia. An elf raised by her militaristic and politically rising family, ever trained to be proper and follow every rigorous rule set for her, Aelia didn't mesh well with her family. Her free spirit was ever seen as a flaw, a defect, and one her family intended to fix, lest it ruin their growing name. And so, at a young age, she was shipped off to the southeast, past the Dreget Confederacy, to the sanctuary of Celstick, a monastery even more rigid than her home. It was here she remained for 8 long years. She learned their religion, and of the paradise they believed awaited the faithful at the base of the world tree. She learned their martial techniques, and the prowess that comes with the mastery of the so-called flame of battle. But she never learned how to be proper. Aelia often ran into problems with authority, earning herself nothing more than extra training, along with foodless days and nights. One day she would be expected to join one of the monastery's 2 orders, the Wise Order of the Heron or the Fierce Order of the Seared. She had no desire to do either of those things, and so, using what she learned in the silence of night, without even telling her friends for fear they would be punished in her place, Aelia managed to escape. She traveled westward, through the Dreget Confederacy, for weeks. She now aims to travel northward, to nowhere in particular for now, but eventually wanting to make it back home, to her brother, and to prove a point to her parents. So thus begins the story of Aelia, the defiant monk. Tragedy is no stranger to those that live in the pirate-infested seas, and it is definitely no stranger to our third character, Bits. Bits was ever the adventurous kobold, traveling the world with his wife for many years. It wasn't until they had a child that they decided to settle down in the fishing town of Totoho. With the wealth they had built up on their travels, they had lived a comfortable life. Some would call it perfect, until the Golden Hand arrived. Known as the fiercest of pirate crews, they pillaged and razed most of Totoho. Bits lost everything he built over the years, only to lose more when his wife and son were taken from him as well. The Golden Hand held them for ransom, with a staggering price of thousands of gold. Determined to get his family back, he set out on his travels once more. Joining the Alton Trading Company, he now runs the traveling shop of Bits and Baubles. He will find a way to buy his family's freedom, and if he cannot, then well, maybe he'll find help for a more direct rescue instead. And thus begins the story of Bits, the Bardic Merchant. Wrathful as they may be, the path of a pirate is a dangerous one. None know that better than our fourth character, Arcadia. Her home was destroyed by pirates at a very young age, but to her luck, she was not left for dead and instead adopted by her new mother, Ceres Rathmore, captain of the Hellas Twilight and leader of the Dusk's Toll. Arcadia never got the chance to know anything beyond a life at sea. Raised on a pirate ship, she happily learned their ways. She learned how to navigate by the boughs of the World Tree, fought the others in drunken brawls, and raided more vessels than she could count. The little sister to everyone in the crew. She had a home, if not a conventional one. When she became old enough, she took part in her first, larger raid. The target of Dusk's Toll was a wealthy middleman storing goods in his manor to be shipped in and out of the shaded sea. Such a task should have been simple. Get into the manor, steal the bounty, and get out. But things didn't go to plan. Somehow, the manor was set ablaze, and everything devolved into chaos. Arcadia led 4 of her crew members through the house, dodging falling beams and roaring flames, all in a hope to get something out of this chaos. But she didn't find the patron's vault. Instead, she found his children. 3 of them, no older than she was when her own home was razed. In the moment, she froze, unsure if she should take them with her, leave them, or kill them. And that indecision cost her. With a crack, the gun in the eldest child's hand went off, sending a searing pain through Arcadia's head. The world swirled. She felt herself fall, and everything went dark. It wasn't until much later that she woke up in a cot aboard the Hellas Twilight. Over many weeks, she had to remain there and heal, and slowly she learned what had happened. The child had shot her, hitting her eye and rendering her half-blind. The other members of the crew fought to get her out, but 3 never emerged from the manor. The one that carried her back to the ship succumbed to his own burns. After sufficiently healing, Arcadia went to finally face her mother, already knowing the fate that awaited her. To fail to such a degree, to be responsible for the death of comrades, she was to be banished from the ship. To cross paths with them again would mean death. No amount of argument would change her mother's judgment, so Arcadia was forced to accept it. She now wanders the seas aimlessly. One day, she swears she will make things right to her mother. She just has to figure out how. And so begins the story of Arcadia, the pirate seeking redemption. Traveling the world exists a people known as the Tehane, a nomadic group ever on cart or ship. They seek to beget children of the world's blood. Conceived at one elemental nexus and born at the other, these children are known as the Genasi. Our fifth character is one of them, a Genasi by the name of Wayrin. Sacred to his people, he's lived a life of relative luxury, not needing to do menial work while he's traveling. He, like all Genasi, got to dedicate his time to his craft. In particular, he had an affinity for glassblowing and runic magic. To those that Tehane passed, the artisanal crafts of the Genasi were seen as blessed trinkets, bringing forth fortune in some form or fashion to those that bore them. All in all, his life was quite relaxed. But that does not come without cost, for the Genasi bear a terrible burden for the Tehane. On the day of their 30th birthday, when they return to the place of their birth during the Tehane's cyclical pilgrimage, they will be sacrificed to the elemental nexus to stave off destruction for just a little while longer. Those born of the earth and flame would be sacrificed to the Titan's Eye, an eternal storm slowly growing in the northern reaches of Kratoris. Those born of the water and those of the wind like Wayrin would be sacrificed to the Titan's Maw, a volcano in the southeast, ever on the brink of erupting. Most Genasi were content with this, a life of luxury and an eventual duty to protect everyone. It was fair. Wayrin was not like most Genasi. He feared his eventual sacrifice, but could think of no way to avoid it. There was no way to think of one either, as long as he remained with his people. So, taking a gamble unheard of to the Tehane, he simply left. He traveled the seas in search of something. What exactly, he wasn't sure. That wasn't until he met a gnome by the name of Flan. Flan was rambunctious, to say the least, a ship captain pursuing a legendary treasure supposedly existing at the base of the World Tree. He is our sixth and final character. Together, they set out to challenge the Titan's Eye, a challenge that ended predictably. With the mast ripped from the ship and the hull damaged, they limped back to port. But not without Wayrin getting an idea. If they could reach the World Tree, if they could beat the Titan's Eye and prove that these forces of nature could be overcome without sacrifice, then he could save himself and the rest of the Genasi. If he could find a way to make this ship move without a mast to break and without need of wind to guide it, he could, probably, beat the storm entirely. So, with the support and financing of Captain Flan, along with his own mastery of glass-blowing and runic magic, the creation of the Cyclone engine began. The early days of experimenting were rough. Model after model failed, hull after hull was damaged, but the two, much to the dismay of Flan's crew, carried on. It was then that the winds stopped blowing. No cloud moved in the sky. After a few days, waves no longer crested. The seas had become frozen. For a month, Wayrin, Flan, and the crew simply drifted. With no choice left other than starve, the captain gave the go-ahead for Wayrin to power up the most recent version of the Cyclone engine. For a time, it worked. The ship headed eastward, towards the nearest port, with no resistance from wind or wave meant the engine actually functioned. Useless for crossing the Titan's Eye, but great for this one instance. Until, as luck would have it, the ship froze over the Kanaran cliffs. Wayrin and Flan could both hear the engine running from the deck, but the ship made no progress. Not wanting to be stuck in such a dangerous part of the sea, the two went down to inspect the problem and found something they could not have anticipated. A great beast of tendrils, covered in eyes, wrapped itself around the engine, having broken through the hull with no effort nor sound. With barely a moment to comprehend what they were witnessing, the beast crushed the engine in its grip, and the two were hurled into the open waters. As they sank, the last thing they witnessed was the remains of the runic magic rupturing and tearing the ship to shreds. Then it all went dark. And thus the tales of Wayrin, the runic wayfarer, and Flawn, the sea-cursed captain, began. And that catches us up on all of our characters for the start of their first adventure. They're currently playing through Arc 1, which I've tentatively been calling the Windless Storm, as they try to figure out what has caused the winds across Kratoris to go missing. I hope you all enjoyed this brief overview of our 6 main characters in the Sea of Fools. If you follow Kona on any of their social medias, hint hint, they're in the description, you'll be seeing a lot more art of them around. For now, though, I shall bid you farewell, and I'll see you all in the next chapter, and the next phase of the moon.